Good morning, everyone. My name is Robert Pesich, co-producer for Beautiful Black Books, presented by Poetry Center San Jose with host Santa Clara County Poet Laureate Emeritus Tshaka Campbell and featuring poet and author Jive Poetic. BBB is a recurring program featuring Black writers in conversation, followed by Q&A. It is a vessel of exchange as we bring Black writers to our communities and our communities to these writers to learn about their sources of inspiration. We begin today's program with the following land acknowledgement. We acknowledge that Poetry Center San Jose and the city of San Jose exist on the unceded land of the Muwekma Ohlone. We recognize that the Muwekma Ohlone people are alive and flourishing members of the community today and recognize their right to this land, which they have stewarded throughout generations. We acknowledge that members of the San Jose community and residents of California and the United States continue to benefit from the use and occupation of indigenous land. We acknowledge that this land has come under the control of various entities through violence and dishonesty, and we recognize the history and legacy of colonialism that continue to negatively impact indigenous peoples, their traditional territories, practices, sovereignty, languages, lifeways, and well-being to this day. Donate to the Bay Area-based Sogoreate Land Trust, led by urban indigenous women. We will share a link in the chat. Now for a moment of silence. Thank you. Poetry Center San Jose is a member-supported organization and is funded in part by grants from Applied Materials Foundation, the City of San Jose's Office of Cultural Affairs, Literary Arts Emergency Fund, supported by the Mellon Foundation at Mellon FDN, Knight Foundation, Poets and Writers, Silicon Valley Community Foundation, SV Creates, in partnership with the County of Santa Clara and the California Arts Council, and also supported in part by a SV Creates National Endowment for the Arts American Rescue Plan grant. We also thank Brandenburg Family Foundation and Anne and Mark's Art Party for their generous giving. To support this program and others, please visit pcsj.org/membership. Thank you all. That's long, and we really have the great fortune of having such support. Now to introduce your host, who will introduce our guest, Jive Poetic. Santa Clara County Poet Laureate Emeritus Tshaka Campbell has authored 4 books of poetry and is an internationally recognized artist and performer. He has won Grand Slam championships in a number of cities across the U.S. And his latest project, In Our Words, an anthology of youth poetry and visual art from Santa Clara County youth, and is part of a larger program called Bringing the Light. That was a great program. He currently resides in San Jose and continues to ask the world to listen different. Please now welcome the man Tshaka Campbell and the man Jive Poetic. Good morning.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you so much, Rob. I need to take you on tour with me. I'm liking this introduction, this intro. But thanks for all of that. Rob, he says he's behind the scenes, but he is definitely a great leader within the Poetry Center San Jose ecosystem. All right, so Beautiful Black Books. Now, as Rob said, this is a reoccurring program featuring Black writers in conversation and question and answer. But really, I put this together as a way for us to have the conversations with Black writers in our communities, but also to bring these writers to the communities with folks who haven't seen them, folks who need to see them, folks that need to come to Jesus, and all of the above. But I am so honored to share the space with this brother. You know, I put this show on because yes, it's important to put it on, but there's a selfish reason to it, is that I get a chance to chop it up with folks that I truly, truly admire, folks that I respect, that are doing things in the environment with the craft that I love. But also, like, as you know, Jive, you know, you can meet and know someone for years, and there's never spaces where you actually just sit down and say, okay, so when you did this, what were you thinking? You know what I mean? And as you know, in New York, the minute you sit down at a table, everything else happens, and you know, you don't get a chance to have the conversations. But before we go in, I want to introduce y'all to Jive Poetic. He's a writer, organizer, an educator based in Brooklyn, New York. He received his BA in Media Studies from the State University of New York at Buffalo and his MFA in Writing and Activism from Pratt Institute. In 2017, Jive was the first John Morning Award for Art and Service recipient. He founded the Insurgent Poets Society, Carnival Slam, Cultural Exchange, and co-founded the Brooklyn Poetry Slam. If you are in the New York area, you have got to make sure you stop in. Your life will be changed. His work has been showcased on season 4 of TVONE's Lexus Verses and Flow, PBS NewsHour, and BET. His poems have been published by the Academy of American Poets, No, Dare Magazine, and Toss the Earth. International recognition for his work has come from the British Arts Council, the Minister of Culture from Antigua and Barbuda, if I'm pronouncing that right. Barbuda. All right, I was thinking Barbados. Barbuda.
That's a very Jamaican thing you just did.
It is very
Barbuda, we love you, Barbuda, and we love you, Antigua.
Absolutely. As well as various US embassies in Australia, Brazil, and Poland. Jive has held residencies at Air Serenbe, Fort Belvoir Army Base, Rhode Island Writers Colony, Marble House Project, and Walter Reed National Military Medical Center. When Jive is not touring or hosting, he's an assistant professor at St. Francis College and teaches performance poetry to underserved youth in New York City and the surrounding tri-state area. Folks, please welcome the phenomenal Jive Poetic. Look, man, I as I said, I'm so honored to have you here. You know, I'm going to jump right in, and just so you know, there's so much to talk about, so I'm going to be all over the place. Usually I'm organized. I'm just like, no, there's just too much. There's too much. So
exciting.
That's what's up. So I want to go in first and just, talk about giving you your flowers, man. There's few people that have been committed to bringing art to our communities as much as you, but even fewer, I think, that do it without the need of sort of like this so-called fanfare, and everyone sort of knowing what you're doing, where you're doing it, how you're doing it, for how long you're doing it. I posted something not long ago on social media that said it was like humility is a thing. And, it had to do with some other stuff like Noah Lyles, but that's besides the point. But, just overall, like, it is a thing, like, but what motivates you to do this, to give so much of yourself to the craft? And sometimes, without what I feel are your due accolades. Like, you've been in this game for a while, so what keeps you moving? What keeps you motivated?
I mean, accolades and all of the kind of recognition is crazy. Well, I don't know. I think crazy can't, supposed to say. It's a wild thing, to work for that type of recognition, because the view and the position and the preferences of the audience change so much. And if you start becoming reliant on that, it'll just break your heart. You'd be like, this is awful, and also I don't do it for that. I don't particularly need to be seen on the center of the stage all of the time. I mean, it brings me joy to watch the thing grow and move. And sometimes it's a little exciting when people are like, oh, you was down with that? I'm like, yeah, what I mean?
I was there.
With that, I enjoy it, because sometimes it's pleasurable just to watch people have a good time without watching them watch who are the curators, who are the builders. I don't know. It could be weird, but I just feel like sometimes it's just more valuable to contribute to the thing without being pointing at yourself for being the one who,
Dude, I love that, because there's just been too many, I'm not gonna call out any names, but there's been too many places I've been to where, it's an hour show, they've got two or three spotlight poets, but the host is reading for 25 minutes, every week. So I'm like, if you want to, go on another open mic, if you're creating something for, for the masses, then let the masses enjoy that, as you said.
Yeah,
So, yeah.
I mean, I hear, and I agree too, but also I recognize as a person who's hosted venues for so long, it is very easy for the audience to forget that you are a poet or writer and not just the curator as well. So I understand the instinct of the host. Maybe sometimes we all might go a little overboard. I don't want to say like I'm not a part of it, but every now and again somebody will approach me after I host an event like, man, do you ever write poetry? You should start writing poetry too. And I'm like, I didn't just apply for this gig. I was doing it. So I understand the instinct to be like, I have to do something to stay visible. Yeah. But there's a balance, and I think that's the thing we have to struggle to find is like, how do I create space without absorbing and taking up too much space and all of these things? And I think that becomes a big part of it too.
That's a good point. I mean, it's just, I guess for me, and again, this is personal for me. It's just like when you got more time than the actual feature that I came to see. Now.
That happened to me once. I went to a show and the host started doing his own feature, and then he started having a rap battle with an audience member, and then we was gonna like, all right, we just gonna bounce, man, because this is our right. He stopped the show and told us, "Hey, don't leave before the magic happens." And I was like, "What is this?"
I'm supposed to be the magic. What?
We all are the magic. It's a bunch of writers in here. That is the magic trick. That we are all writers in the same place at the same time. Like that is the magic.
Right.
You absorb mistakes. You are actually disrupting.
Disrupting the flow. Exactly. Crazy. Well, look, when I read your bio, there's U.S. Embassy, Australia, Brazil, Poland. You've done a lot of work in the UK, for example, and we've seen each other actually in the UK. In your opinion, what's the difference between sort of the poetry scene, the poetry community in the UK versus the poetry community in the US, and just what you've experienced so far?
It might be a little bit hard for me to get. I haven't been back for a while. I think it was just there in October, but I think when I was going frequently, one of the biggest differences that I felt was the size of the competitive environment. United States, like if you look about like the mid 2000, like around 2010, 2005, 2000, there was like aggressively competing against other poets, both on and off the stage. And I kind of felt like when I went to London the first time, there were a lot of poets. They were competing in a different way, obviously, to have their work visible. But it was also a lot of audience members who were just like, oh, you guys write poems, let's just watch that, And sometimes in the States, you might go to the venue and everybody in the audience, everybody's a poet. And then it's not their turn. Some of them are outside, So I felt like, and I think because of the culture and the way in which we all understand language and access language, linguistic gestures that work in England don't work in the States, and things that work in the States, they couldn't care less about in England,
Right.
So I think some of those things, we speak what sounds like the same language, but language is culture. And so when you move the context, these things mean different things, And so I learned right away what was working. The set I do in England is not always the same as what I choose.
Right. And is that also down to its like granular level? Because I know and it's not even in the UK, when you go to different places, words mean different things, right? Garbage, rubbish, you know what I mean? Like, did you find that you could adjust your work?
Not so much in the word choices on stage, but I think in my physical presence on stage, I had to learn to. So in the States, what we think is the peace sign could be very disrespectful. So for my first trip, I would do the show and then I would flash the peace sign to everybody. And I found out that was the equivalent of flipping somebody off. So every show I would gotta help the Black people, my grandmother doing a thing, and then boom, flip everybody off. And it's like,
what?
What's happening? So I had to learn social cues and gestures were different. But I think in the word choice, I don't know that I had, they had internet. We have the internet, so it's like some of the cultural things they have more access to. I think I found myself struggling with the language they were using because while they have access to our pop culture, I don't have all the access to them. So there were some things that people would just say to me, and I'm like, you can't say that, like,
Yeah. Yeah.
there's a restaurant in Bristol. It was called Plantation, and I was like, okay, this seems great. There's a place called the Nappy Laundry, but it was about washing diapers. I thought it was different, so I had to really kind of observe and like just agree to be quiet and watch and listen for context.
Yeah, there is that sort of that impact moment. I remember being in the tube once, and I was rocking my bow tie, and I'm standing there, and a lady was like, "I love your dicky bow," and I was like, excuse me, I don't know you like that. And I went through all kinds of things, and I came back and I told to my wife, and she was just like, "Yeah, that's your bow tie. Get over yourself." So there was that.
I wouldn't have known what to do with that, right?
Yeah, right. Exactly. So jumping to kind of similar to what I was talking about before, there's a quote that says, "Finally, we get to hear from the poet and educator who has lit fires under hundreds of young poets. Jive Poetic mixes history, family, and social commentary to bless us with one-of-a-kind cross-genre collection." And this came from Nicole Seeley, author of the Ferguson Project and Erasure. Now, what does that mean to you to hear this from such a respected personality in poetry?
It's a little overwhelming sometimes. You know what I mean? It's exciting too. Because it's easy to find yourself writing and then sitting in your writing environment, and after a while, after the editing and rereading, you feel like you're spinning your tires and you're just going in circles and nobody's getting the stuff. And then, the writers you love and respect get the work, and they're like, no, this is something else. The audience, they're gonna like what they like, and they're gonna not like what they don't like. And you can't control that, and you can't. I don't know if you can even afford to be sensitive your feelings, because the internet will hurt you. That's the most dangerous city I've ever been to, is the internet, right? Like, they'll hurt your feelings. So it's like, if the writers you love and respect your work, it feels really good. Particularly the people who blurbed this book, man. What set of coincidences and luck put me in the space where these are my friends and family and colleagues, and they will read this stuff and say these things. It was beautiful to read them. When the blurbs came in, I didn't get to read them first. The publisher sent them. If I see something in the email, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna wait. You know what I mean? The publisher or the agent sent it to me, and I'm like, whoa. Yeah. Then it's, I don't know, what do I do when I go see the person next to me? Like,
thanks.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's I think it's it's dope, and I'm appreciative. You know what I mean? And I'm thankful, and I think it's important to say those things publicly too. That, like, thank you for not just the words, but taking the time to even read the joint and understand it and walk to it. Sometimes people judge the work from where they stand instead of trying to go to where the work already exists and seeing what it is.
Yeah, that's fantastic, man. What you said that was so important for me is just with the idea of doing this work and spinning in circles, especially with like with this collection of something that's so personal. I always fight with, hey, but why would they care? You know what I mean? It's like, sure, I'm writing these poems, but I got to give, I'm also gifting them right out. But why should they care? And so you get, sometimes, at least with me, you get wrapped up in that. So to have, like you said, your peers look at this and say, no, there's this thing here, or there's this, can be amazing, and I think gratifying, at the same time. That's fantastic. And the whole idea of you, like, how could these people be in my universe? Dude, the universe is gonna put out what the universe gets, and you putting out you putting out, fantastic things out in the universe. So it's going to find its way to you.
Thank you.
You know, question. So one of the questions I love to ask is about, I love comics, right? So like a hero's creation story. What's your creation story? What happened in life that led you to be a writer, a poet, to do what you're doing?
Whoa, creations. Well, so my mom met my pops at some point in the. Now, I mean,
But a
what?
man likes a woman.
Yeah, right. So there were, so the continents were all connected at one point, and then they started moving separately. You mean what put me on a path to writing
Yeah.
in general, or put me on a path to writing this particular?
No, both actually in general, but for me, it's more in general, like that you were just like, yo, there's this, I went to this venue and I heard this thing and I was like, I got to do this from now on.
Okay, so I've always had a fascination with language. Like that was, back in the day, you might obsess over wrestling, you might obsess over the NBA. It was me with like, the Transformers and then clever turns of phrases.
Right.
Like that just was something I was super fast. And then telling stories was something I always loved. I think I started experimenting with poems when I started falling in love with hip hop. You know what I mean? But I was experimenting with actual writing the poems themselves. There were a couple of albums that had poems on them. KRS One had a cappella pieces on his albums. Mobb Deep had a cappella pieces on them. Master Ace had a poem on his album, and I always kind of found myself getting drawn back to these things where they weren't kind of rhyming, but they were still very visual and they were rhythmic and all of this stuff. And so I continued. In undergrad, I started, trying to find open mics and stuff like that. As there was a poet in Spain, he told me, he says, there's always a girl somewhere involved, every artist at some point, there's a girl somewhere, I tried to write, I wrote one to a girl once. She spell checked the joint. She edited it, gave it back. I was like, oh, she sucks. I'm never doing it again.
Circle scratch out.
She scratched the stuff out. You know what I mean? One of them gave it to all of the friends, man, made copies of it.
Wow.
It was bumpy, man. It was bumpy. And so, but then I discovered like open mics and slam. And I saw Saul Williams in Slam. And I was like, okay, there was a scene where he's in the jail. And they was gonna get him, and then he just started doing a poem, and then nobody got him. They did it like, oh, we're not gonna beat him up. He knows poems.
It's a bulletproof vest.
Yeah, his poem's a bulletproof vest, man. So I was like, well, look, whatever that kind of talking, I didn't know what it was. I was like, because that wasn't like the poems I had read or even heard on these albums. And I was like, okay, whatever that kind of talking is, I want to learn. That's how I phrase it. Like, whatever that talking is, however you talk like that, I want to learn how to talk like that. That's it. That's the thing I've been trying to figure out, And then eventually I started finding more and more venues. I found my way to the slam scenes, I mean, I don't know if that was a long walk to the answer to your question.
No, that's perfect, man. But that's the parts that I'm talking about is like, what are those little touch points on the map? Jump on a 2 train, where are you stopping off that gets get you to the spot. So no, this is perfect. I do have I know when we talk about this collection that you've put together, one of the things that I know I grapple with enough is about creating a collection of work versus creating sort of a poet creating a single piece, a single poem. How did you manage that? Like, this idea of, hey, I've now got these poems. I want to put this in a place. I want to host these poems in a book. Like, what was that process like for you? Or was it the other way around? You were like, hey, I have this idea for a book. Now let me fill it with poems.
So I had the idea for a book. Well, I realized at some point I'm going to need a book, right? I think that's the progression of these things. I'm going to need one. How does it look? And there was a moment where I thought like CDs, that's it. And that's the future. They're not going anywhere, And I started making these poetry albums and mixtapes and CDs, and all of a sudden the internet happened, and the internet was like, we're going to give your CD away for free.
Right. Yes.
Right? And then I was like, well, look, it's very hard to bootleg books. Like you can probably get a PDF and download it and share it, but that's a lot of work to scan all of these pages,
Right.
you know. And that's why I was thinking, well, look, how does this thing get preserved? There's books that are hundreds and thousands of years old and they're still around. So I want to get in that environment somehow. And so there were a couple iterations of it, but I started to develop this particular book during grad school. I went back to grad school and I said, okay, how can I approach this collection? What is it trying to say? What am I trying to do? And I gave it to, you know, people, some trusted readers. You know, my agent was like, she looked at the version, she was like, nope, you gotta take this out. You gotta take this out. This don't go. And she was right. You know what I mean? I was like, no, you just don't understand. She was like, you understand, and this has gotta go. And when she did these edits, it made sense. But what happened was, also with those edits, I was like, oh, now I see what the scaffolding is. Oh, Terrence Hayes too. Terrence Hayes was like, listen, man, you got to think of a way to scaffold this thing so they all fit together. And usually, you know, if he drops some bars on you, you're well served to to like record them joints. You know what I mean? And so I was like, okay, I need some scaffolding here. And I thought about, well, how would I have approached this if this was an album or a mixtape or a CD? I DJ, right? So how would I string, if these poems and essay and prose and all this, if that was a mixtape, how would I sync these things? How would I blend them? What things would I cut up? What things would I spin back? You know, and what things? And so I really approached it like, you know, if this were a mixtape and these poems were the tracks, how do they go together? And then it expanded to like, all right, well, what if the whole thing is like a sound system making a mixtape, right? What if it's a selector and DJ, our sound system, and they're making a mixtape live? You know what I mean? How does that look in a book? And then I said, what if? And people say, okay, it's too many what ifs. Let's just focus on mixtape sound system thing.
Scaffolding 6 buildings. Right.
In my brain, because my brain works in these what ifs, what if, you know? And so once I figured out, okay, I can string it together in this kind of a way, you know, the book started just writing itself. It started happening. Like, oh, this goes here, this goes here.
Yeah. That's so dope, man. And for those, again, folks, you know, go out there, get this. I don't know how to do. There it is. You know, you got to get this. And part of the reason I say that is because there's two things that you just said that sparked a note. Is the sound system. And when I think of, like, there's a way of thinking about a sound system for Americans. There's another way of thinking about a sound system for West Indians, Caribbean. Like that's a building. You know what I mean? And I felt that, like when I stepped into the poem, when I stepped into the book, like I felt like I walked into this. It was more than just like a mix session. Like I was in. You know, I was in Barbados or I was in Jamaica walking it, you know, on a Friday night, walking into the with the trucks and the you know, and the speakers, et cetera, et cetera. You feel engulfed with it. So again, that's just a little Tshaka blurb for the folks when they need to go out there and get this collection.
But that's exactly it, Tshaka. So it's like originally when we pitched it, you know, we're like, listen, this thing, the idea is it's a mixtape, and they were like, okay, cool, we understand mixtape, we got it. And then I was left alone with my thoughts, and I was like, what if? Or what if? And I fell into that what if rabbit hole again. I was like, what if this is actually a sound system? Ooh, what if it's actually a hybrid sound system because it's on paper and it's in a book? And they were like, well, what you mean, like a stereo? And I'm like, no, like in Jamaica, sound system means this. And I was surprised to find out how people didn't actually know the West Indies sound system isn't just stereo. It's like a whole collection of people. It's the music too. It's the record crates. It's the speakers, you know. And so that's why I named the sections. You know, the sections are named after like turntable, you know, crossfader, all of these things. Like whole thing, you know. There's dub plates in there, everything. You know? Yeah,
it's phenomenal, man. I think it's an education within an education. Y'all got to go out and get this book. You know, when I want to go back, I want to jump a little bit to some of the accolades, right? MFA in writing, curator, DJ, which you touched on, educator. What is the most impactful thing to this point that you feel that you've done? And I don't mean so much impactful to the recipients, impactful to you, right?
To me,
Yeah, to you, because there's one accolade you probably don't know about, that you were super instrumental in me getting married. But we talk about that offline.
What?
Yeah,
Check,
that's what
bring your
accolade you find.
families together.
You know what I'm saying? You got to put that on your bio. We talk
I
about
will
that.
put that on my bio.
Yeah, but it was a pivotal moment that you have no idea about. That was like, all right, we're gonna make this happen.
What an honor! I did not. I think I DJ'd the some sort of. You had an event at Bowery.
Yeah, no, that was after. That was like this. So we had gotten married, but we were in the UK, and so I wanted to celebrate with my US folks, and so we had that, and so that was a celebration after. This was like a year or so, a year and a half or so before that.
I can't
Yeah,
wait to hear that story. I did not know this.
it had to do with DJing.
What an honor! Wow.
Yeah, man. Yeah, but that's my personal best accolade. What's yours in terms of what's been most impactful for you in the things that you've done today?
Um, and you mean like impact that's had the biggest impact on
Yeah,
me?
yeah.
I would say this probably would have been a difficult question, more difficult question to answer a couple of months ago. But uh, for the book release, I flew my family here to see the release of the book
Yeah.
and to watch them hear the work for the first time, to watch them to know that I honored their truth, our story as a family without too much re-traumatization, to know that they felt good about the work. That was the biggest thing, like
Mhm.
knowing that the people who are represented in the work feel good about it, knowing that I feel good about it, that matters a lot to me. And
Yeah.
and that was like probably like looking at their faces when I was reading the poems and seeing, I was raised by my uncle, and it's mentioned in the book, he doesn't really, he's not an outwardly emotional guy in public, right?
Right,
If
right.
the emotion he'll give you in public is not the emotion you
The truth
want
of the Republic.
in public, like you don't want that, right? So to see that it landed with him, to see that it landed with my mother, to see it landed with my sister, to see that it landed with Mo, Mari, all these people, like to know that it landed with them in a way that they felt was virtuous and truthful and representative of our experience. That mattered the most to me. I don't think anything else impacted me the same way, you know.
That's phenomenal, man. That is great to hear. I mean, and again, I didn't want to go with the impact for the people, because you've done so much great stuff. You've touched people. You probably still touch folks that, by way of, osmosis, that you don't even know about. But I also wanted to, really understand, like, sort of for you, what does, and this is probably a bad way to put it, but like, what does success in that space feel like? What is that to you?
Mm.
And being able to fly family in to see that, that's so dope, man. That is so
Yeah.
dope.
I mean, that's the thing. It's like being able to like look, at some point, all of this, everything that we know around us is going to be gone. It's going to belong to a whole new generation of people. It's going to be a whole new environment, but the book might still be here, And knowing that while I'm here and while they're here, they're able to hear the work and be like, that's us.
Mhm.
Knowing that this will represent us when we're all gone, you know what I mean, really matters. Because so much of the work is about, finding ancestry and finding legacy. And, being Black, there's so much fear about digging into your past. There's so much pain, you know what I mean? There's so much concern that we won't be able to find anything. And so I don't want, I don't think that I should have, if I have the ability to write and communicate and then I participate in being a brick wall where you can't find anything, then what am I doing? So knowing that this made them feel like, okay, we can deal with this. This is,
Yeah.
you know.
So that's fantastic, man. And again, the way that you talk about, there's so much musicality in the way that you write and the way that you perform in what you hear in this book, that it does sort of provide guardrails for me, at least, in that digging. You know what I mean? There's certain moments in there that in the book that sort of there's one where it's called Dub. Is it the Dub? I'll find the poem. But it's like going back and forth. And I don't know what about it. It just sparks something in me. But again, because of the musicality of how the book is sort of put together, it's less of a, it's I don't even know. It's like getting a tattoo, but you put on numbing cream. Yeah, I mean, it's I'm getting all the greatness of this new tattoo I'll get, but it's not hurting as much. You know what I mean? And so that was fantastic as I was reading through that book.
I'm so glad that's something that you picked up on, and I'm so glad it felt safe in that way. I mean, look, people always say like, "Yo, just write it. Don't worry about the safety. Don't worry about." But you don't want the wrong people to get hurt either. I mean, there are poems that didn't make it because I let family members hear them or read them, and I just saw their reaction was too adverse, and it was like, regardless of what I think about the poem or how I feel about its construction, is it worth knowing that I have a family member, a relative, sitting somewhere hurting because of this, and they don't have the same access to counter narrative that I would have? Like, they can't. All right, I can put the book out and I can come on this and read these things, and then it's out. He could just be at his house. You know what I mean? He might talk to 200 of his Instagram friends, and that is unfair for me to leverage my voice that way, to use it that way. So I'm like, listen, if it's hurting you and it's legitimate, it's not like, you don't get this like, no, I'm talking about somebody who we're both related to, or I'm talking about you, what I mean, in a way in which I didn't intend to hurt you, but you are being hurt. It wasn't worth it. So, I figured, like, how do I write this thing where the people who I want to hit get hit? Like, there's people who get hit in this book too, people who I want to hit get hit. And then people who don't, they can feel safe to walk through this,
Right. So, and that brings up an interesting point. So that's like, okay, how is this book going to lay on top of folks that I know, right? Now we shift this to, a non-Black audience, right? And into the world in that way, where any concerns in sort of, it's a personal journey where you're worried at all about, what's the word I'm looking for? You're worried about assumptions that will be made, or, because sometimes when folks, I think, at least these are conversations that I have when white folks read some of this work, sometimes it's read through their eyes. And then what you sometimes get is this, oh, that's how it is for this group. That's how it is for folks that live in Brooklyn during this period of time. So whereas part of it is, that's what you're trying to convey is this story. Are you worried that when you package this, it's taken in a direction that you didn't intend it?
I used to worry about that. I don't know. I used to be like, how I try to anticipate. All right, how can this be taken? What are and I can't anticipate them all, but I try to. It's why I write so slowly. I'm thinking, all right, what does this mean? What does it mean that this word is here but not here? What does it mean if this person reads it but they haven't experienced this? And and I'm not sure if that's borderline, obsessive, but I'm hyper aware because for my whole life I've lived in a world where I have to be extremely cautious about how I move because of how I present, how I look,
Yeah.
And so, I'm very aware. I also find that, because I've written so much of it about my experience, people cannot like it, but that doesn't change the things that have happened to me. You know what I mean?
Right.
They can say like, well, I don't dig it. It's not for me. It quite well may not be,
Right.
and that's okay. I do suspect that I have some views and positions that people may not agree with, and I try to be sensitive to people so that, I'm not trying to, I don't know. I want to write things that communicate my experience to the world and communicate that experience to people who share my experience, and also to people who don't share that experience but are curious to see what it's like,
Yeah.
And that's not always an easy task, and I know that my hyper sense of caution can slow down the process. I know that, I know that people are going to maybe see some of these things online or read them or hear them and completely miss the context because there's a word or two they get tripped up on, like, yeah, but he said this.
Yeah.
And without saying, I don't think that's what he meant, though. That's what he said. You know what I mean?
Right, exactly. I think that's why things like this are so important, right? You get behind the work, right? And so you get out of your own way when you hear, so that you talk about your work. Why Skip Tracer? Why that title?
So so a lot of the book is that my so a
No,
lot of
that's me. I'm sorry.
I was like, is that
Yeah,
my
that's not you.
is my Outlook open? What is I've been sitting here, I don't know if you know, I've been sitting there closing windows because I'm like, that cannot be.
That's me, but I'm trying to figure it out myself.
It's probably if you got Outlook open, that sound like Outlook, man. You got your work emails going on.
I'm saying, I'm like, y'all, I'm on this show. Leave me alone.
Look at the flyer, man. He's on the show.
Exactly. Oh man.
All right, so the question was why Skip Tracer?
Yeah.
So originally the idea for the book was to trace my grandparents, great grandparents, as far back as I could, then find those ancestral siblings and then trace them forward. And the goal was to go to 10 countries and meet 10 people who didn't know they were related to me.
Mm.
And I made contact in 8, and I've documented it and all of this stuff. But I realized, oh man, well, I got to track my grandmother, you know what I mean? Because women get erased all of the time through this. And every time I track somebody, it always pointed me back to my grandfather, right? Everything, every gesture, every document eventually pointed me back to him. The stories that I was collecting, so many people had so many things to say about him. And so I was like, okay, well, let's investigate this. Let's say yes to this gesturing by whatever forces and see what it is. And his name, one of his nicknames was Skip. And so a skip tracer is a person who finds people. Like that's their job. They go find people. If you owe something, they're gonna find you. They're gonna give you your information to the creditors. If you got a debt, they're gonna all of this. So a skip tracer traces a person. And so I was tracing Skip through time, through environments, and all of these things. And then I also was like, well, look, I'm tracing Skip. Tracing his lineage. I'm tracing his formation of identity. Tracing his idea of masculinity. All these things are getting traced in this book. And then I think about what does it mean for a DJ to have a skip in a record?
Mm.
And because, the poems are records, right? The pictures are records, they're documents, they're recorded information. So it's the idea of what's a record, a recorded document, recorded music. And then look at the skips. So what about the skips in my family lineage? How do I investigate those and fill those in? What about the skips in the vinyl? How do I fill those in? So it became about filling in these skips and then filling in the things I didn't know about the grandfather too.
I love that, man. I love that. There's so much in the title. There's so much. So sometimes it's a whole book within itself. You know what I mean?
Right.
What's your favorite genre of music?
Ooh, that's tough. That's probably the most difficult question. I mean, I identify so much with hip hop, right? I love hip hop. Hip hop is a parallel story to my own. It's immigrants came to the country, developed this thing. It's me. It birthed this thing that grew up in this environment, and so did my grandparents and great grandparents. My favorite genre. I think I listen most to hip hop. I'm learning now to specify a very specific era of hip hop.
Yeah.
It's changing.
What's that era? Because you're gonna get all kind of trolls now. What era is that?
I'm with the trolls because the thing is this: I like the contemporary stuff too. You know what I mean? I'm not one of those be like, that ain't hip hop. This is hip hop. And they were saying, I'm sure people before were saying whoa, this ain't hip hop. What we do is
Right,
hip hop.
that Rakim thing. I don't know what that is, but
This ain't how you rock a party with all them words. They're gonna all be every era is gonna be this. So I like some of the contemporary stuff too. I think I'm most connected to stuff that came out in the late 80s, mid 90s to the mid 90s, only because that's so much of the time when I was developing notions of who I was and that music was growing as well. The music, I grew up with the hip hop movement, you know what I mean? So I love dance hall, old dance hall, lovers rock. I listen to lovers rock pretty frequently. I've been getting really into house music. I've been playing a lot of house music when I DJ lately. Yeah, that's right. You a house? That's right. I remember this about you. You like house music?
House head, my friend.
Yeah.
Yes.
During the pandemic though, I listened to none of these genres. None of them. I listened to only music that came out in 1984. It was if you look up records from 1984 and 85, you'll be surprised how many great records came out in 84, 85, man. Like so much great music. So like that whole pandemic, I have like a thing called the 80s Walk playlist. And I just listen to that for like.
Nice. I love it. I love it. What's your favorite word?
My favorite word.
At this moment, because I realize that changes, you know, especially with poets, it changes often, but like at this moment, what's like your favorite word?
I have a favorite phrase. Does that count?
Yeah.
Okay, wait.
That's it?
I use that phrase all day, every day. Like, because sometimes the environment moves so fast, I'm like, okay, wait. Okay, wait. I didn't realize how frequently I said it until I saw a recording of myself and I was like, oh, wow.
Yeah.
I say this all of the time, you know what I mean?
It does so many things, right? It's like either, like you said, it stops it. It's like, no, let's reiterate. Or it's like, wait, hold up. Check yourself.
It's also affirming. Okay, wait.
Yeah, exactly. It's multiple things. I love it.
I use it all day.
Love it. Will AI enhance or destroy music and poetry in the future?
Will AI enhance? Wait, that's two questions. Will AI
enhance music or poetry?
Will AI enhance or destroy, or enhance and
or destroy?
I don't think it can destroy music. I'm not sure. We've never seen anything like AI before. But will it enhance music? Maybe, because what it's going to do, it depends on who uses it. What it might do is give people access to create music that's trapped in their head that they just don't have the technical abilities to do. Like if you give somebody an MPC or a violin or a pair of turntables or a flute and say, make a song, they'd be like, I don't know where to start. But if you say, here's a computer, all you have to do is hum the song in your head, put it into the microphone. Maybe that makes more access to the, there are rappers that I love, like I love their music, but for whatever reason, they lost their voice. Like think about Beanie Siegel, right? For example, there was a moment where like people listened to like excited when Beanie dropped the record, right? But his voice, he didn't stop writing. He still writes. He can still write, but his voice isn't the same sonically, But what if he could write the stuff, and the AI says, "All right, reference track, 2002, 2003, Beanie Siegel voice."
Yes.
Like, whoa, or DOC, right? The DOC, like reference track DOC 1988, you know what I mean? And here's the new lyric. I mean, I don't know what it's going to do. I think it might shrink the amount of millionaires it's going to create. You know what I mean?
Right.
You're not a tech. If you don't do tech, you might not get it. But it's scary because one of my larger concerns is intellectual property.
Yes.
Because now, how do I own or license the sound of my voice? Because if I've signed anything and they own that recording, then maybe they use that. And I think that's dangerous. I think that watching the Kendrick Lamar Drake battle made me really worried about the legacy of Tupac, right? Because if they've experimented with a Tupac hologram already, and then now people are experimenting with Tupac's voice, what happens when they decide we're gonna put a Tupac concert up?
Right, exactly.
And then what happens if Tupac concerts start touring with people Tupac wouldn't even have spoken to? Like, what does that mean? Like,
it's going to start on roadblocks.
There's so many implications. Do I think it'll destroy it? I don't know. It might push really good music back underground, and then we might get some incredible stuff that the industry doesn't know anything about, right? It could do that. It could it can force us to create something we've never seen before, because hip hop, we got it. We're still making it.
Right.
We don't have a new one yet. Right? I don't know. We have derivatives of it, and maybe AI says, all right, everybody can do it. Everybody can make it. You can make it on your laptop. Now do something that we've never seen before. And I bet you there's a kid somewhere sitting probably in Brownsville or, I don't know, Sandusky, or that's the place, Sandusky. You know, cause it could be some unexpected place. And Sandusky, that is no diss. I'm sure you have creative geniuses that have never been.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We'll come to your town.
Is Cedar Point in Sandusky, Ohio? If it is, then I've been there. But all I'm saying is anywhere there's somebody creating something and they're using this tool to revolutionize how we understand music. You know what I mean?
Gotcha.
It could be the end of what we understood as music, but it might be something brand new.
Yeah, we don't know, right?
Don't know.
We just don't know. All right, I'm gonna let you get into the book. I got one or two quick questions before we get you reading. Trademarks, right, is one of my favorite poems in this collection. If you had a choice in performing that poem anywhere to any audience in the world, where would that be?
If I had trademarks to perform that poem, I really would like to perform that poem That's a tough question because I'm not sure where I haven't performed it. Like I perform it frequently, you know, but I think the poem probably will be served at an institution or a community of people who are struggling with the idea of inclusion in terms of race, nationality, you know, ethnicity, where these things kind of may align in a way in which we understand it may not align. I'm not sure if that answers the question, but I think I enjoy the most performing it in spaces where there are Black people trying to navigate that consideration.
Right, right. No,
You know, it's tough, you know, that particular piece, you know, it's about this cousin. And if any of those cousins were in the States, you know, they're probably 2 generations from somebody assuming they're African American straight up. You know, they have British last names, they don't have last names that sound like they're from Spain or any kind of derivative, you know what I mean? They're dark skinned, you know, and so all of the things that was signal, at least the way, you know, our conscious understands,
right.
you know, people might miss, you know, and who knows what that might do to them, you know what I'm saying? So I want to share it with people who are struggling with this or have been through something similar and don't know how to express it.
Yeah, I love that, man. Identity is a thing. Identity is definitely a thing.
It's a fragile thing too.
Yes, indeed, indeed. What makes a good poem for you?
What makes a good poem? I think a good poem, one, is imaginative, you know. You know, it's some, or if I read it, I'm like, oh, I've never thought of this. You see, I never thought of this, or I wish I thought of this first.
Right. Exactly.
You know what I mean? Yeah, like I wish I thought of this, man. Or answers, it addresses answers or presents something that I too am struggling with or trying to navigate or understand. It's not overwritten. And I think sometimes, you know, a lot of poets, particularly those of us, I say us because I don't like to exclude myself, those of us who've come to poetry from performance, you know, sometimes we know that we have to over stylize our work because whereas one day we might be in a library, the next day we might be in a bar where who knows what's happening, and if we are not attracting all of the attention, you know, and I like poems that can do that work without seeming like they're intentionally over the top, you know, and that's subjective, what's over the top.
Yeah.
I really like imaginative language, man. I really like language. It's just, you know, because a lot of my work, you know, some of it is abstract, and a lot of it is like, this is the poem in the real life event, right?
Right. This is it.
The poem is, can you believe this thing just happened to me?
Right,
You know what I mean?
Right.
And so some people write in these ways in which I'm like, I'm lost in the world they built. And I'm like, whoa, you know. But yeah, there's a lot of things I think make a good poem, and it's an evolving list too.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, I love that. All right, look, I'm not gonna hold the people from your work any longer. We're gonna give you some time to read. What time is it now? 7. We got like a good 15, 20 minutes. To share with us, and folks, listen up. This is something that you need to put in your journals. But yes, I will pass the microphone over to you, Jive Poetic.
All right, cool. Thank you. So, okay, what I'll do is I'll read a couple joints from the book, and then maybe what I'll do is I'll read a joint that kind of inspired the process in the book that didn't land in the book.
Okay, perfect.
All right, this first piece is called Mixed Down. Wait, sometimes I struggle with what order do I do the poems in? I don't know. And they're already in the book. They're already ordered. I don't have to.
There you go.
All right, Mixed Down. Kick drum. Customs agents don't care. Snare. Your country was destabilized by the flag on the paycheck's baseline. Deportation comes with a jail cell, chords. I think about this from a distance, vocal track. Jamaicans only hear my American accent, reverb. They call me freshwater Yankee, reverb. They call me Jamaican, reverb. They call me Jafakan, compression. Whenever they get a chance, sample. They don't do this to white people. They don't do this to white people, keys. Not even the ones with the dreadlock wig strings. They know where the money is, vocal track. The first time I heard Spanish, it was spoken to my great-grandmother, vocal track. The first time I spoke Spanish, a teacher graded me on a vocal track. The last time I needed Spanish, I had to think in English first, background. Nobody told me about Jamaicans in Panama, background. Nobody told me about Jamaicans in Cuba, harmony. School taught Black history, filter. They defunded the Swahili teacher, Pan left. Language is culture, Pan right. Culture is language compression. They want standard American echo. This is how the world sees me, feedback. My birth certificate, feedback. My passport, feedback. My accent, feedback. No fear of deportation, mixed down. Luxury, mixed down. Privilege, mixed down. Distortion, mixed down. All right. This next piece is called Electric Mayhem. Superhero pajamas and Mocha Mindy suspenders is how old we is. Muppet Show on television is what time it is. Good sofa by the glass table in the living room is where our mother is. Unhinging the downstairs door is where our father is. Revolver spring ready is where our stepfather is. Neighborhood too scared to do anything is where community is. This is what it is what they say it is, but what is to become of a stepson of a gun if not adjusted to an estranged broken window by electric mayhem o'clock? It's titled, The Mayor Be Like. The mayor be like, ain't nobody trying to buy no used car, only one window work. Rear view mirror got a crack, back left tire flat, cigarette butts all up in the ashtray, coat hanger where the antenna's supposed to be. Trunk got a bungee cord rope holding it closed. It smell like aqua velva inside. Aqua velva smell like drugstores. Don't nobody want no used car smelling like no drugstores. Drugstores sell A&D ointment and lottery tickets at the same time. Plus, what you look like buying a car, one seat got a rip in it. Glove compartment won't stay closed. Headlight work when it want to. Air conditioner work when it want to. Radio work when it want to. Muffler drag on the ground and make all kind of noise. How you buying a car and it sound like it's going faster than it is, even when it stopped at the red light? Got to shift it to neutral so the engine don't cut off. Got to pump the gas in neutral so the engine don't gotta cut off. Got to ride around with booster cables just in case the engine cut off. Don't nobody got no time to be on no side of the road with no booster cables. Booster cables is dangerous. Sparks be flying all over the place. Plus, truck drivers be talking about distributor cap, alternator, timing belt. Don't nobody know what no timing belt is. And if they do know, then they know they don't want no broken one. But this is how it goes. The market is risky. New cars, shiny. People try and steal them. Old cars, classic. People try and steal them. Broken cars, fix them. People try and steal them. And this ain't even about what you can fix. It's about knowing what you can't. Because time is an investment. Is a commitment, is a relationship, and don't nobody need this many red flags. if they know they ain't no mechanic. All right. And I think Tshaka asked me about trademarks. So what I'll do is I'll do a couple of pieces that are in the book and they inspired it. So this poem's called Trademarks. The embargo split us before our parents were born on opposite sides of a missile crisis. His grandfather lost their English on the way to Havana. I picked up Spanish, but it falls under the pressure at the table, after the lunch table. He finds a bed in the bottom of a beer bottle, runs from it, back to our family reunion. Our grandparents were cousins. Now they are dead. Conversations that can't be reintroduced because the translator is in the bathroom or walking back or far enough for me to see our native tongues are not indigenous to our bodies. They are proofs of purchase, replicating on autopilot. They are auction block fugitives, pledging allegiance to the branding iron. They are African voice boxes, crushed into blood diamonds, bought and sold on a black market, no matter how far from the plantation. Me and my cousin still ain't free to meet. We can't even speak without our master of both present to translate our trademarks. And yeah, I'll do this piece. Kingston ends when a roster tells me everything I'm looking for is already looking for me. The van between parishes, a pilgrimage through the archives. I've imagined this landscape, the ackee trees, the breadfruit trees, the family, roots. I never found any living in Jamaica, but today I am butterfly net determined to capturing a fluttering mythology. In Manchester, I speak birth certificates over a telephone, and my accent crawls back to New York, places its version of Jamaican patois back on the shelf, next to the pictures and recipes and other chip statuettes I'm here to reassemble. The next day, a computer search surrenders a death certificate with an address. I find a house caged in a patient revelation. A woman answers the door, speaks in kaleidoscopes, points at the sky. A swallowtail flies. I follow. It becomes a cousin. We meet. It rains for the first time as we hug like a fork in the road, bent back on itself. And I'll do this last piece. And this last piece is one of the pieces that kind of inspired the project, this journey of finding family. Rolling ocean crashed between her toes, sand built the coastline. She tight-roped yesterday to her back, facing tomorrow with the Panamanian sun set in the most black of her mouth, full of clumsy English, rickety on her Spanish tongue. Shuffling Caribbean accent marks inconspicuously, she blended in Jamaica, where Cuba gave her the sun. She spoke clumsy too. In Canada, West Indian camouflaged her. Panama, invisible mistress of the skies, toggling West Indian syntax, translucent at the border in full masquerade. My grandmothers were dream catchers, hopscotching countries, jumping identity double Dutch, watching greener shades of brown grass darken every time she landed behind a language barrier she clutched. Yesterday's tongue under today's image, exercising her phonetics to flip acrobatic English easy for her. Foreign tongue was Spanish in Jamaica, Jamaican in Canada, Canadian in New York, reaching for citizenship, red taped out of range with immigration on her heels until her last breath evaporated above Los Angeles as black, as planned. Her maple leaf colored children, sifted, accent free, obscured behind Jamaica, Panama was blindfolded, monolingual. My tongue now rolls as rickety as her English did 3 countries before. One cold shoulder ago, Latin America recognized me no more than Jamaica did. Call me American, boy, under breath, over unbroken speech patterns lost in translation. I felt invisible, while visibly in neither command of enough Spanish nor patois to correct the secrets hiding her inside me, undetectable. Even in death, she lives around the border of my eye, while I, tongues away from the language she learned to speak in New York of my tongue 2 generations away, and I kid you not, I'm in the dark of this dance hall. Multiple Spanish reggae tones mocking the star-spangled portion of my red, black, and green footwork falling off of every drum beat chuckled at me, this collage of a woman, tildes between her locks and patois flowing from Latin roots when she smiled. She smiled me still. When she spoke me speechless and somehow made me homesick for a place I had never been. Thank you very much, people.
Oh my, she spoke me speechless. Come on, man. Stop it.
Thank you, good sir. Thank you, sir.
Man, look, I was trying to, as I'm as I'm listening to you, I'm trying to like image, image how your work hits me, and not just what you said today, but like I've heard you over the years. And this is going to sound really crazy, but when you go to a chiropractor, right? And a chiropractor, the chiropractor may put their hand on your shoulder, but then they do something in your back, right? And then it's like click, and then all of a sudden you're like, wait a minute, I feel better. Like that's what it is to hear your poem. It's like you're reading and it's coming over me, but like the words, it's crawling behind my back and then like releases the pressure in that little area over here and then that little area over there. I mean, I don't know how else to explain it, but it's such dope work.
Oh man, thank you very much, man. I didn't realize I was chiropractic these poems.
I'm saying, look, you cracking bones, you cracking bones. I got a couple more questions for you. Thank you so much for your work. Thank you for who you are. While we go through this, someone that's in the chat, and they asked, I think this is a Michelle, what is your process of writing? Do you force yourself to sit down, or do you write as it comes to you naturally?
Peace, Michelle. Thank you for that question. I don't know. I never know how to handle these. Like, thank you very much, Michelle. I appreciate the question. It's a bunch of ways. I will be clear, Michelle. I am not particularly good at receiving writing prompts because I overthink. So if someone says, "Hey, Jive, your prompt is this," I'm gonna lose 48 hours, no sleep, just sitting staring at the computer, starting over, and it'll be like, and then I won't be happy with the piece. I can produce that way, but it's not my preferred way of writing. I kind of look for inspiration on a daily basis and just experience life. Like I literally will be doing random things. Like I'll just be walking down Eastern Parkway and like, oh, a mechanic shop. Let me just go in there. I don't have a car, but what are they doing? You know what I mean? And then who knows, that might turn into a poem and I'll document it. Or I think about the things that I just say over and over or do over. And I'm like, okay, let me write that down, man, because that's on my mind. And then I find the poem in it later.
Yeah.
So, but I do try to engage writing in some capacity as often, if not every day. Like maybe I write something, maybe if can't write anything, I'll go edit something. Maybe I can't edit something, I'll just read something I've written over and over again. And I try to engage the process, but I found that it's a lot easier for me to produce if I just allow myself space to think. You know what I mean? And so I end up finding myself walking around really late in Brooklyn, which is
which is a poem with itself.
It's a poem in itself, because there's a whole, like, people understand like this, a way Brooklyn looks during the day, but then there's a whole different Brooklyn happening at 2 a.m. You know what I mean? And so like I literally would just, and that's obviously it's a very privileged thing to be able to do, dangerous still, but it's when the city is the most quiet and I can be outside, and I'm lucky enough to live in a city where if I have a line or something that inspired me, I can say it out loud outside and nobody will think that's too odd. Like they'll be like, I wonder, is he an actor or, he's so committed. One time I was practicing a piece and these guys they were doing their thing, if you know what I'm saying, at the spot. And I was going off and they stopped and started looking at me. And I looked at them and we all started laughing because I knew I must have looked like this guy's having a full conversation with himself. Because I will edit a poem out loud out in the street without even caring who's watching. Because I'd rather practice it. You can practice in loud New York or dangerous New York, distracting New York. When you get on stage, it's going to be easy to remember. So I try to engage as much as I can, and if I can't, I go outside, ride my bike, do whatever. I don't know if that question, Michelle, did answer the question.
Yeah. If this book, if Skip Tracer was an actor or a singer, who would it be?
If Skip Tracer was an actor or a singer, I don't know. If Skip Tracer was an actor or a singer, it would be an ensemble. It would be like a group of actors and singers, and they may or may not always talk to each other.
Mm.
They'll talk to each other, but it'll be I think it'll be a group of artists together. And because I
Like,
tried to write it with that intent. If I had to pinpoint an actor, I'm not sure
yeah.
who I could say.
What was that group that it was Dawn from In Vogue, and it was Ali Shaheed and someone else.
Lucy Pearl.
Yes, Lucy Pearl. So when you say like a culmination of artists, target, would it be you referring to like something like that, like a
Yeah, it would have to be like, you know what, we should make our own group, and then the people, they weren't even doing music and they weren't even acting. They were just like, out, hey, you know what, we should write a book together. I like hip hop too,
I love it.
and they'll do that maybe.
Wonderful. I have a question from in audience, Donnie Jackson, a great poet in his own right. He says, "How do you encourage new poets to treat poetry as a craft?"
How do I encourage it?
New poets.
Okay, I think it's always tough because I'm not sure if we all define craft the same way. You know, um, and it depends where I meet them. If I meet them, at a school where I'm teaching and they're just taking it because they need an elective. I
Yeah.
encourage them by giving them a passing grade or not a passing grade. You know, but I've learned, when teaching craft, I think the most encouraging thing that I'm able to do, or I try to do, is try to understand where the poet is coming from and what they're writing, and then try to walk to that and then show them how to craft and structure the thing they're building. You
Mm.
know, because sometimes, when you come to depending on how you've come to poetry, you have had a wildly different experience from the person sitting right next to you. And if there's a separation between the academy often, there's a separation between the stage and the page often. And so we don't know what's being brought into the room. So what I do is like tell the poets, listen, be open to things that you know and things that you don't know and things that you think you know and things that you not sure you know, but you're scared to admit you don't know them because there's violence that comes with it. Like, it's almost risky to say you don't know how to do something. You know what I
Right.
mean? I meet a lot of young poets who will sooner say, well, I'm not a poet. I'm just a something, something, something that does something, 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 right? I'm like, no, what you're doing is poetry. It's just the environment you're comparing it to doesn't align. That's like saying, you being very good at sonnets, and then all of a sudden you're in like a limerick country of limerick, like well, there's a country of limericks, right? They invented it, but you're in a country of whatever, and you're like, oh, then I'm not a poet. No, what you're doing is poetry too. Let's just look at the craft that's here and how does it fit into the tradition of things and how does it not? Because you never know, they might be creating something new. So what the first thing I do is try to encourage a space where an editing session is not an attack session, right? Like if I'm editing or critiquing or giving suggestions, I'm not attacking the person or the story or the validity. And sometimes people think that, you
Right.
cut the line. I've seen grown people just break down in tears because you cut a line out and they're like, you don't understand. Like, I do understand. You've explained it to me and I read it and I think it does that same work without it.
Yeah. 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 It's hard. It's hard. I mean, that's a whole nother BBB session, is just in editing, and then who you would trust. And that was a question that I had for you, but we'll do the next round. Around who the kinds of people you would trust editing your work. But there's two sections, and we're coming to the close. There's two sections that I always do with the guests on the show. This first one I call it the Who Dat section.
Who
So
that? Who that?
who that, exactly. So you're in an elevator, right? You're in an elevator for 3 hours. The elevator breaks down. Who do you want to be in that elevator with you for that 3 hours? Now, it can be anyone from any time period, from any era, but who are the three people that you want to chop it up with for 3 hours in that elevator?
All right, I'm trapped in the elevator. I got 3 hours.
Yep.
Um, Mahogany L. Brown, Rico Frederick, a third person. I'm trapped in this elevator, and no help is coming.
No
Nobody.
help is coming. And it could be past, present, future. It doesn't matter who can be in that elevator with you.
Past, present, future, anybody throughout time. Oh, and my great grandmother Louise.
Why great grandmother Louise?
I have so many questions to ask her, and she's so documented. Like she's one of the most documented people in my family. Like, I found her in newspapers. And the thing is, I would have so many things to ask her. And those people that I named, Rico and
Yeah.
Mahogany, they're both so good at keeping me grounded and focused.
Mm.
They both understand me so well that they would be able to be like, okay, Jive, look, this is what, you know what I mean?
Enough.
They're like, okay, or like, hey, man, this is what you were saying earlier. I think that would be a good, and I think that so much of my experience as a writer and as an artist involves witnessing.
Mm.
I've been really interested in being able to write stories that I was there for, stories that people told me, but also, my favorite thing has become is like when I do a poem and somebody who was in the poem is in the audience, are like, "Hey, you remember that?" That
Yeah.
is so much fun for me. Like, you was there, remember? Because quite frequently people will see me perform and they'll be like, "Did that improv? Did you make that up? Did you?" And I'm like, "No, just because I memorized it, just because I engaged, it doesn't mean I'm improving it. It means I've committed to it in a different type of way." You know what I mean? And those people in the audience anchor that story in a public truth in a way in which I really enjoy sharing with people.
Mhm. It also brings a level of integrity to the work, right? It's like there's folks that sometimes get up on stage and I hate to say it, sometimes it's just like I don't believe you. You know what I mean? For whatever reason, it's like I don't believe. Great poem, I just don't believe you. So I think that adds that sense of integrity to the piece. But it's interesting when I do this exercise. I think you've been the only person that had the 2/3 of the people like to be current people in their world right now. Folks always go to I would Obama or whoever the case may be. But it's so interesting for me that you picked two of the individuals that are like you know in your ecosystem right now. And I think you when you said like they keep you grounded, I think that in part and parcel is indicative to like who you are as an individual, and it just makes sense.
Thank you. Here's the dangerous thing I just thought about this. The problem, though, is if those people are with me, I don't have any. Who do I call? I gotta call my mother or my sister. Like, you know what I mean? But the thing is, it's like I interact with a lot of people, and okay, so imagine I'm in an elevator and I'm stuck with Obama, right? For 3 hours. Some of that time is gonna be like icebreaker. Like, do I just talk to him? He's Obama. Like, do I just be like, yo, son, you scared? Like, how do like he gonna make tension? It's gonna be tension. Like, it's gonna be like if I'm stuck in the elevator with Hove, I'm like,
So last time we were in the elevator, no, sorry.
he gonna have to say something to me first, and then it's gonna be like a bunch of small talk to build it to, and he might not. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's
It's gonna be like that's gonna make it more tense. You know what I mean? And then they're gonna rescue him first, obviously.
yeah. That makes sense. At least you know somebody coming at some point.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
That's hilarious. I never thought of it that way. That is that's such a good point. Like if it's like someone's idol, there's gotta, unless that's your personality is just immediately to jump in. There's gonna be that space of like, do they know that I know who they are?
Right.
Yeah.
Like, and they're like, do I gotta be the famous person? Or can I be just as scared as them right now? And it's gonna be a whole, I don't want 3 hours. By the time we warm up, we gone, and then they're gonna be on TMZ, and I'm gonna be back on the 2 train. You know what I mean?
This goes right back to you why I can't give you a prompt. Because you gonna be all of it. They go to
What if? What if? What if?
you know, what if then there's a post and what if? I love it. I love it. All right, the last section that I have here, I call it the quick fire round. And it's the first thing that comes to your mind. You don't have to overthink it or whatever, but it's like I'm gonna say a word and then you respond with the first thing that comes into your head. It could be a word, it could be a phrase, but it's just
Right.
like this spontaneity, right? All right.
Right.
First word, poetry.
Archival.
Graffiti.
Misunderstood.
Mighty Sparrow.
Legend.
Art.
History.
Language.
Culture.
Blood.
Family.
Black man.
Misunderstood.
Cuba.
Mythical.
Lineage.
Necessary.
Woman.
Necessary.
War.
Terrifying.
Laughter.
Survival.
Brooklyn.
Home.
Steel drum.
Eastern Parkway.
I miss that so much, man. Loss.
Loss or lost?
Loss. LOSS.
Oh, heartbreak.
Basketball.
Difficult.
That's right. Religion.
Expensive.
Nuyorican.
Iconic.
Slam poetry.
Stressful.
Love.
Oh. Essential.
Biggie Smalls.
Gone too soon.
Literature.
History.
Father.
Father. Missing.
Wife.
Love.
Pain.
Life.
The last one is butterfly effect.
Every day.
I hear you. I love it. That last little butterfly effect was probably the last time you and I had like an elongated conversation. Where sometime downtown Brooklyn was me, you, I think Ainsley Burroughs. We're talking about a piece of work and this whole idea of butterfly effect, and like it was just like that one word that just evolved into, I don't know, must have been like 40 minutes of conversation on the street in Brooklyn.
You want to talk about butterfly effect? That's the poet's work you should look up.
Indeed.
Yeah, boy.
Indeed. But look, man, this has been incredible. I'm so glad. I know there's so much that you're doing, man, especially like even without the book coming out, you know, that just adds a whole nother level of things that you're involved in, that you're doing. So I really do appreciate the time, you know, spending with me on this Saturday to just, you know, just chop it up. It's been long overdue, and I'm glad that we could do it sort of with Skip Trace at the backdrop of this conversation. But, you know, thank you so much for coming on, folks. As I said before, like if you don't, how do I do this? Come on. There you go. If you don't have a bookshelf, buy one so you can put this book.
Buy this for the book or something.
It's gonna be worth it. You know, the book is amazing. Not only the poetry, but it's how the poetry is sort of embraced. Sort of in I love the word you said, the scaffolding that holds this work. So Folks, go out and do it. Jive, thank you for this book. Thank you for talking to me. Thank you for what you put out in this world. Thank you for the commitment that you have to this craft, however you want to define craft. And, you know, at the end of the day, for getting up in schools and like getting and talking to our kids, man, there's just so much that's needed there. And it just feels good to know that, you know, you're being a sort of a column that's holding up that roof that needs that needs so much support. So thank you for all that, man.
Hey, thank you for having me, man. Thank you for reaching out. Thank you for your thoughtful questions, man. Thank you for being, you know, my boy for what, 20?
Don't tell nobody. They don't know how old I am. You were there at my 50, dude, too. What? It's been a minute.
Okay, we won't believe the age. Thank you for being my boy for a good portion.
Right,
You know, for a good portion of our lives. We've known each other more than half our lives at this point.
Absolutely, man. So look, have a great day. Hug all the people that know that you know I want to hug, but I can't get the hug. You know, I got to get Rico on here too. Have a conversation. You know what I mean?
Yeah, Rico, Broken Calypsonian, man. That's his book.
Yeah. I'm reaching out. I'm getting there slowly. I'm getting there. Like I said, this is part for the masses and part my own selfish.
Okay.
To be able to chat with folks. So I appreciate it, dude. Have a fantastic rest of your Saturday and keep doing you, man. We need you and we're grateful.
Thank you, brother. Thank you so much.